In this tutorial, we'll show you how to add a new GUI component into your app, namely a spinner, which is more like adding a drop-down menu box for the user to actually choose from one of them to say that's their input, rather than just typing from their keyboard. Okay, let's see how we can do this. And first of all, launch Android Studio and then start a new project. We'll create a self-contained app for you to see how this new GUI command is going to work. Okay, so now start a new Android Studio project and then application name. Let's just call that spinner. Okay, that's the name which you have to look for from the view components over there. We'll show you. And then let's follow the same naming convention here for the company domain. Let's put EECS 1022 for the course. And then over here, the project location, you can choose wherever you like, as long as you know how to find them. In my case, I'm just going to store this new project over here on the desktop of the virtual machine. You can do the same. If you actually store that in the virtual machine and you want to import that to the lab machine or to your home computer, you can just zip up the project and then copy and paste, and then either use a USB and then or email to yourself, either way. Okay, let's now say next, and then just use the default option phone and tablets and next. Now let's create an empty activity over here and say next. Okay, activity, we can just keep activity name, we can keep that just the default. But for your specific app, you should choose a more meaningful name. But for illustration purpose, we just use a default name over here and say finish. Let's wait a bit for the project to be built. And then first of all, we're going to add a button which we learned from the previous tutorial series. And we want to say, whenever we choose something from the drop-down menu box and we hit the button, and we're going to display some result or output to say which item has been selected. Okay, that's something we're going to do. But now let's still wait for the Gradle to be completed. Okay, it's now still in progress over here. Okay, it's going to take a little while. Okay. Okay, it's now done. So now let's go to the view file. Let's now go under app, under resource, and then under layout. Let's go to activity main.xml. Okay, remember we got two perspectives for design and text. And we're going to drag and drop some GUI components to begin with. In the beginning, we only get a hello world over here, right? Let's delete that. Okay, let's just right click and then we want to delete this. Okay, so we have no components, as you can see from the component tree. There's no components over here. Okay, so now let's first of all do something that we learned already. Okay, so let's drag and drop a button to the GUI over here. Let's put it here, let's say for example. And then we're going to move it all the way to the right. And now let's give a text. Just call that click. Okay, it's not a very useful name, but for this particular illustration, that's good enough. And also for ID, I'm not going to bother with a meaningful name for this particular tutorial, but for your specific app, you should really choose a meaningful name for your ID and the text. Okay, enter. Okay, let's click over here. And now what we want to do is, we want to say whenever, if we click on the click over here, it's going to execute a block of attached Java code. And how do we do that? The way to do this is we go to the controller code, which is the main activity Java class over here. Double click on that. So now we keep this part the same as before. Okay, we don't touch it. What we got to do is we have to say public void, and then we can give any name of the method. Let's say button clicked. Button clicked. Whatever method name you like, can be anything. Now the parameter or the input for this particular method here must be as follows. First of all, if you simply say view over here, Android Studio is going to give you a compile time error because you can see red underline over here. That's simply because we have not imported, if you see under here, the import list. Import list is going to include all the library classes that we're going to use for this particular project. In the beginning, the view is not imported. We can import that automatically. What we can do is, let's only type partially, VIE, and you can see now in this drop-down list over here, it suggests that this might be what you meant, and this is indeed what we mean. Enjoy.view, this is the library we want to import. Click on that, And then you will see that now in the import over here, we do have that completed automatically, okay? And then view over here, that's the type of the parameter, the input. Now we have to give a name. It can be view or it can be v, whichever name you like. Let's just keep view to be consistent with the previous tutorial. And then open and close curly brackets in the middle, hit enter, okay? So now currently the body of implementation for this method here is empty, okay? But we're gonna expand this in just a moment. But now let's do the linking between the controller and the view. So now what we want to do is we want to attach this particular block of code to our button click. What we do is let's go back to the view over here and now click on this button here and then under the properties, let's look for the on-click attributes, okay? It's sorted alphabetically. Let's look for O, okay? So now let's go under here. Okay, on click over here, you can see there is an upside down triangle over here. Click on that. You will see the button clicked method that we just declared, even though the implementation body was empty. But it's there for us to choose. Okay, make sure you choose that so now it's linked. Okay, that means later on when we run our app, whenever we click on this particular click, it's going to execute whatever code that we're going to add inside this empty block over here. Okay, we're going to expand this in just a moment. Okay, and then let's go back here. And then let's add one more text view for displaying the answer. So now let's go under widgets and then plain text view. Okay, let's now drag and drop and put it here, for example. Okay, and then we can just put it here. Okay, you can fix the alignment a little bit later as you learned from before. But I'm just going to make the text empty here, and then the ID, I will just use the default, okay, text view. But you should choose a meaningful ID for your own app. Okay, enter. Okay, so now we have created button and text view. So these are the two things we learned from the previous tutorial. Let's now learn something new, namely some drop-down menu box or a spinner. Okay, so what we want to do right now is we want to add a spinner. Okay, so now you can look under widgets, and then you will see one of the item over here is called spinner. Spinner stands for a drop-down menu box. Okay, drag and drop this over here, and let's place it over here. Okay, now you can expand that all the way. Okay, you can ignore the rendering problem over here. When you actually launch the app, you will see that it's okay. Okay, let's close this. Okay, so now click on that and expand this, let's say all the way to the right over here. Okay, spinner. Okay, it's now done over here. But now we have to actually give the options that can be selected from our code. Okay, let's make this a little bit bigger over here. Okay, let's make it actually a little bit smaller. Okay, it does not quite look like a drop-down menu box on the GUI over here, but when we actually launch the app, you will see that it's really a drop-down menu box. Oh, bear with me. Okay, over here, we're gonna for the ID over here, we'll simply say spinner. Okay, so for the spinner mode, we simply leave that just default. Okay, don't put anything yet. Okay, so now spinner. Okay, what we have to do is we have to look for, so click on spinner here. What we want to look for is a property or attribute called entries. Okay, so now if you look for the attribute called entries, let's look for that. Okay, it's sorted alphabetically. You will see something called entries. Currently, we haven't got any entries, but I'll show you how you can do that. The way to add a new entry is as follows. Let's now go to a different resource file. Okay, you can see under REST resources, and let's go under values. Okay, and then under values, there is an XML file called strings. Okay, that's the file. Double click on that. You can see currently under resources, we got only one single string that's defined, which is the spinner. By the way, if you change this value here, your app name should also change. The one that you saw over here, you can see currently is spinner, okay, over here. But if you somehow change that over here in the strings, change that from spinner to whatever name you like, you should change that as well. I'll let you test it yourself. Okay. Now, we're going to add a new resource string over here. Okay. Let me show you what to type. Less than sign, and then you can see you should really try to make use of the code completion feature as much as possible. Once you type the less than, it's going to give you the suggestion. what we need is string array. Select that, and then what should be the name? The name should be something that you're going to refer to as an ID. Let's call the name, simply call it options. Okay, but for your specific app, you should give it a more meaningful name. Okay, and then close this, and then you can see it automatically have the closing tab for you. And then hit enter. So now we're gonna add a list of options over here. So the first one, each one of them is gonna be item. Okay, each one of them is gonna be item. Okay, now the first item, let's call that option 1. Of course, what option that should be depends on your app. I'm going to make it completely general. Let's say we want to have 2 options. Item, option 2. Of course, the number of options you want to have also depends on your app. Now, I'll just put 2. You can definitely have more than 1 options if you wish. So now what we have done is we added this particular block of XML tag, which is not self-closing, right? So now this particular string over here is a string array. Array simply means is a numeration of a list of stuff. Over here we got option 1, option 2. Okay. Now let's go back to the XML file for the layout over here, activity main.xml. Now if you click on this spinner here, and now go back to the entry attributes for this particular GUI components, let's see what happened. Okay. And now if you go there, okay, actually let me show you an easier way to do this actually. Okay, let's now, rather than from the design graphical view, let's go to the text view over here. Okay, I want you to, let's maximize that by double click on the tab. Okay, now let's look for the spinner. You can see the spinner we just created was over here, right? It's a spinner. Okay, that's a kind of the GUI components. So now I want you to be careful of what you're going to do here. Okay, you can see this part over here is it's a self-enclosing tag, but I want you to be careful not to delete this, but just hit enter over here. Okay, so now we're just gonna add one more attributes. Type Android. I'm gonna use the code completion feature, Android, colon, and then let's type entries. Entries over here you can see equal to something, right? Okay, so now let's add this value over here under entries. Okay, so type add and then type array and slash whatever ID that we gave to this particular string. For example, if you go back there, you can see we gave the name options. Okay, so that's why we're going to type options over here. Okay, now once this is done, so now we are getting there. So now let's go back to the controller code. Okay, so we already added this spinner over here with the ID spinner. Okay, that's an ID to notice. Okay, now go back to controller code. Now let's type some helper methods which you do not have to really understand how exactly they are defined, but you just have to know how to use them, how to make a method call to use them. Okay, let's type it out. So first of all, the first one is going to be the same as what you learned from the tutorial series. You can just reuse it. I'll type it out very quickly. First of all, it's called private, and then void set contents of text view. Okay, and then we're gonna pass integer ID and then comma string new contents. Okay, this one you have already used in the tutorial series. Okay, and make sure you put a comma in between the parameters. That's important. Okay, so now I'm just gonna apply the same definition. View is find view by ID and then ID. And then we're going to say text view is, okay, make sure, again, you have to make sure you type partially text view, okay? You're going to make sure you use the code completion feature to hit it. So they will also import this particular class into the import list, okay? Text view is, and then we're going to do something here. And this is something you don't have to worry about what it really means. Okay, view. And then we're going to say text view dot set text. And then we'll put new contents. Okay, so that's the first method we're going to use. Okay, and the second method we're going to do is something new. Okay, again, this is just another helper method that you might want to use if you want to use the spinner GUI components. So this one over here is something you learned from before. This is to set the contents of the output text view, okay? Like to say what the BMI is, right? So now over here, just another helper method, okay? You only define this helper method if you want to use a spinner, new GUI components. So now we can say private string get item selected, okay? So we want to get what's the item being selected. It can be option 1 or option 2. You can see each option is each item is actually basically a string. One string is option 1, the other string is option 2, okay? Now let's go back there and let's finish this helper method here. And then what we're going to do is we're going to type over here integer ID. And then again, the body of implementation for this helper method, you don't have to understand exactly what they mean line by line. You just have to know how to use this helper method, okay? And then we say view is find view by ID and pass ID over here, and then type partially and then select spinner from the drop-down menu box to complete the code. You can see now over here spinner is also imported, okay? So spinner over here, and then you would say spinner equals, and then parentheses over here spinner, and then we'll say view, and then we'll say string is spinner dot get. Okay, actually I made a typo. Okay, just make sure. Double N. Okay, and then we'll say spinner dot get selected item dot to string. Okay, and then return string. Okay, return string lowercase. Remember, everything in Java is case sensitive. Okay, so what should we do now? Let's say once we click the button there, we want to know which option is chosen. If option 1 is chosen, whether option 1 is chosen or whether option 2 is chosen. Okay, that's something we can do. Let's do something very simple. I also want to show you a little bit of if then else, because this is usually the structure you will need in order to analyze which option has been chosen. We want to say if option 1 is chosen, we'll say option 1 is chosen. If option 2 is chosen, we'll say option 2 is chosen. Okay, let me show you exactly how you can do this programmatically. Okay, in your controller code, you can simply say the following fragment of code. Declare a string variable called a selected item. And the selected item is going to be retrieved by calling this helper method. Okay, we're going to say get item selected, and then we want to pass the ID for our spinner. You can see that if you go back to the GUI, the view over here, you can see for the spinner, the ID is simply spinner. You can also see from a design point of view, you can see for this spinner over here, double click, you can see the ID is also spinner. Okay, you can see from both ways, they're equivalents. So let's go back to activity over here. Okay, item selected, we're going to use the ID in a similar way, r dot, and then ID dot spinner. Okay, so we look for that selected item there, which either can be option 1 or option 2. Let's do the following. So now the selected item over here is actually a string. So we want to compare this string value against what option might be chosen. Okay, let me show you the standard line of code. You can also refer to the lecture about if then else selection to see what this really means. We can say if it is the case that the selected item, so how do you compare string values? We'll talk about strings a little bit later in the course, but to compare string value, you do not use equals equals. It's a very common mistake. You never compare string values, use equal equal. You typically don't. Whatever string object over here, you say dot equals, okay? And then if it is option 1, okay? So that means option 1 was chosen, then we would say set contents of text view, and then we can say, and then we have to pass the ID first. Okay, so now how do we pass the ID? We can say r.id dot text field. Okay, remember the text field over there, the ID was the text field. Let me show you here. The text field over here, right? This one here, you can see the ID over here. Let me just scroll down a little bit. It's actually text field. Okay, so now let's now go back to the controller code. Okay, and now we're going to say what the context is. You can say option 1 was chosen. Of course, this is only for illustration. This line is only for illustration to show you the skeleton of the code. However, for your specific app, you may want to do some computation specific to this branch, the if branch over here, for this branch, when option 1 is chosen. Okay, that's something you should do for your particular, for your lab exercises. Now, we want to say if option 1 was chosen, we do just option 1 was chosen. What if option 2 was chosen? What you can do is you can say else if, over here you can say, again, the same selected item dot equals, over here, option 2 over here. And then, because in general, you might have more than 2 options. So I would say if, else if, you can have as many else if as you like. Okay, option 2. And then you will do, I mean, just copy this line of code over here, and then I'll paste it here. Okay, so now you will say option 2 was chosen. Okay, so basically that's it. Okay, so now that's what you can do in order to actually see which one. So basically, we got 2 branches over here. We got 2 branches of possible actions. The first branch is when option 1 was actually chosen from the user from the drop-down menu list, the spinner. We'll set the view to be option 1 was chosen. In the other case, which is mutually exclusive, which means they don't occur at the same time. If option 2 was chosen, we will say option 2 was chosen. Okay, that's what you can do. So now let's try this. We're going to launch this particular app, and then we'll try to see if that works. Let's now test the app. Let's now click on launch over here, and then in case the USB is not there, what you can do is under devices on your virtual machine options, under devices go to USB, and then you can choose ASUS Nexus 7. Okay, and now it's now connected over here. You can see, you can close this, and now offline. So you have to choose the USB options. Okay, so now if you see on your tablet, say something like allow USB debugging, you will say OK. So now it becomes active. So now we'll say OK, and then we'll see what happens on the tablet screen. Okay, the app has been launched. So now you can see that over here, you actually got a drop-down menu box over here. If you click on the upside down triangle on the right, you can see option 1 or option 2, right? So let's say I choose option 2 right now, okay? And as I click on click, it's going to say option 2 was chosen, right? Remember the second branch of code in the controller, it says that if option 2 was the selected item, we will actually set the view to be option 2 was chosen. On the other hand, we can choose now option 1, and then if you click, you say option 1 was chosen, right? Because depending on which input the user really entered by selecting either option 1, option 2, or whatever item in the list, and then when you click on click, it's going to execute the corresponding branch of code. Okay, that's something you should really try to apply to your GUI design and to your app.